I believe this is one of, if not the most turbulent and controversial cases that I have covered. Viewer discretion is advised. They say to never judge a book by its cover, but when that book has Joshua Young on the front, there might be an exception. But before we start judging Josh and his sick mutton chops, let me give you a better idea of who he is. And in order for you to know Josh, you need to know Josh. Don't worry, there's plenty more of those. This goofy looking fella is Joshua Gouker, and in 1996, Joshua Gouker had a kid with a woman named Angelina Young, and that kid's name was, you guessed it, Joshua Young. I'm sure you can tell by the fact that I'm using mugshots here that Gouker is a bit of a hellraiser. He was in and out of prison for pretty much the entirety of the 2000s, and that includes in April of 2010 when Angelina Young passed away from a drug overdose in her home. Josh Young is now 14 years old at this point, and he's left without parental supervision. His mom has passed away, his dad's in prison, so he ends up in foster care, and this could have been the point where the metaphorical shackles that he was bound in fall off and he changes the path that he was destined to follow. But you and I both know that's not what happened. Gouker gets released about 6 months after Angelina passes away and reunites with his son, Joshua Young, effectively extinguishing any sort of hope Joshua Young had for a brighter future. So the duo needed a place to stay, and they ended up with Gouker's cousin Cassi. Now this is probably a pretty good spot where I mentioned that Gouker was a little bit of a promiscuous Percy, so to speak. He'd been around the block a few times, and he was never really one to shy away from a romp in the sack. In fact, that includes in 1996 when Joshua Young was being born, Gouker was actually sleeping with a woman named Amanda McFarland. Only a few months after Joshua Young's birth, Amanda McFarland had a child with a man named Terry Zwicker. Oh, sorry about that. I meant Terry Zwicker, the man that would later become the husband of a person named Terry Zwicker. Is there only a handful of names you can choose in Kentucky? So Amanda had a child with a man named Terry Zwicker, and that child's name was Trey Zwicker. I'm sorry, I have to throw this in there. The father's name Terry is short for Terrence, and Trey is also short for Terrence, which means that in a way, Trey's father Terry had the same name as his wife and his son. What the Anyway, Gouker's womanizing ways are in full force after prison, and after moving in with Cassi. Yeah. So Gouker gets out, gets his son, moves in with Cassi, and wouldn't you know it, Amanda McFarland is a neighbor. The universe works in mysterious ways. So while Gouker is roto-rooting his cousin on the side, he starts to date Amanda McFarland. They end up getting married, they end up moving in together, and not too far behind, their kids are in tow. Amanda's son, Trey Zwicker, he was a good kid. He was on the honor roll at Seneca High School. He sang in the local choir, liked to hunt and fish and ride dirt bikes. He was just a regular Kentucky kid living his best life. Even though Trey had a much different upbringing compared to Young and Gouker, they all seemed to get along well enough. Trey would get invited out to things like parties and outings, barbecues and stuff like that, so things seem to be going fairly well. So now we're at the end of 2010, December 2010, and Gouker's probably at his cousin's house pulling her weeds, if you know what I mean. At some point, Gouker ends up calling his pregnant wife Amanda. It's a butt dial probably, but Amanda can hear Gouker and Cassi talking. Just to give you a recap here, Gouker's only been out of prison for 4 months now, okay? September, October, November, let's say all of December. In those 4 months, Gouker's reunited with his son, moved in with his cousin Cassi, started dating Amanda, gotten married to Amanda, moved in together with Amanda, and has gotten Amanda pregnant. He's literally speedrunning life. So Amanda gets this call and, well, what she hears isn't good. She hears I'm talking about the marriage, the relationship, and overall just bad-mouthing her as a person, a mother, a wife, everything. It's all bad. It was a lot for Amanda, and in fact, it was too much. Amanda is now keenly aware of what's going on, what kind of man she married, and exactly what kind of relationship her husband had with his cousin. So Amanda opts to terminate the pregnancy. She gets an abortion. And it's that decision that has far greater consequences than she could have ever imagined.
They spotted something in a ditch in a wooded area behind that school. That something turned out to be a dead body.
Terrence Trey Wicker was discovered in a ditch yesterday afternoon behind Liberty High School.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Johnny, and this is Morbid Curiosity. In this episode, we're going to be covering the case of Trey Zwicker. Now, this one is set up a little bit differently than other episodes, but if you've made it this far, I assume you're probably in for the ride. However, there's a lot of information I got to wade through, and if you can't tell already, this is going to be incredibly complex with a lot of twists and turns. If you're feeling antsy about this, I totally get it. So here's some key moments in the video if you want to jump around or if you want to skip to a certain part. And if you're watching on YouTube directly, there's chapter markings here as well. Before we jump back into the case, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody for all the comments, likes, subscriptions, everything. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Every time you watch, like, comment, subscribe, it helps me a lot in the algorithm, and I really, really do appreciate that. So thank you. If you'd like to support Morbid Curiosity a bit further, consider becoming a patron or a channel member. You get things like early access to videos, stream highlights, case images, all that good stuff. But otherwise, thank you for being here with me, and thank you for being a part of this journey. Oh, and if you don't mind, subscribe to the second channel, Morbid, where you have things such as highlight compilations, reactions, experimental videos, stuff like that. Lots of good stuff coming there too, I promise. On May 11th, 2011, Trace Wicker was found beaten by a blunt object and left to die in a ditch behind a local school. His biological relatives were inconsolable, shocked at not only what happened to Trey, but the brutality of it as well. Trey suffered at least 13 blows directly to the back of the head. The investigation began by speaking with Trey's primary guardian, Amanda, and Amanda told police that she saw Trey the night before, May 10th, at about 10 p.m. Amanda and Josh Gouker spent some time together alone in the bedroom before going to get cigarettes at the corner store later on that night.
His body was found Wednesday in a ditch near Liberty High School by some students. The school is in the same neighborhood where Wicker's mother lives. Police suspect foul play, but have not made public any information about a potential motive, and they've not labeled anyone a suspect or person of interest. Trey's family and the community are struggling to make sense of it all.
No suspects or persons of interest, but the court of public opinion carried on. Questions swirled about if either of the Joshes had anything to do with what happened to Trey, and that includes from within the family. Josh Young doesn't help his case almost immediately out of the gate. The mother of one of his friends recalled at the funeral that he shrugged his shoulders and said, "He wasn't my blood." And now that seems like kind of a callous point of view, doesn't it? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, though, with Papa Gouker throwing gasoline on the proverbial fire. You see, Gouker wasn't just released from prison in 2010, he had a conditional release. He was still on parole. Part of being on parole includes having check-ins with your parole officer, and Josh Gouker, being the nurturing father that he is, decides that now's the time to take his boy on a vacation to another state, right after his murdered stepson's funeral. To the uninformed, you definitely cannot do that while you're on parole. You can't go to another state, but you definitely should not do that immediately after your stepson's funeral. So things are bad, but Gouker, the habitual line stepper that he is, pushes just a little bit more. This is one of the parts of the story that's widely misreported, and I'm looking at you, Maiko. So Josh Gouker decides to take Josh Young on a vacation on June 14th, 2011. It's about a month after Trey's funeral. In order to make this happen, Gouker enlists the help of Jahira Riddle, now Jahira Friend. Some reports say that Jahira and Gouker were sleeping together, but that's actually not true. Jahira was actually one of Josh Young's older sister's friends. But more importantly, she was the one with the vehicle. Another fact that's often glossed over is that there was another woman that was with them, and her name was Angelique Burkhead, or Angelique, I really don't know. So they all decided they're gonna go to Tennessee because they wanna go swimming at a hotel pool or something like that. Now, I know this is completely unnecessary, but I can't help myself. The border of Tennessee is 160 miles from Louisville. Was a swimming pool really the reason why they went? I can't help but feel like there's plenty of other places to go for a dip before you get to Tennessee. But whatever. So they get to Tennessee, they get a room, and at some point, Burkhead hears something concerning. Really concerning. She hears little Josh did it. Used a slugger. Full body chills, Burkhead needs to leave, and she needs to leave fast. So that's exactly what she does. But before she leaves, she hears one more thing to really solidify that she wasn't hallucinating. Before she leaves, little Josh Young tells her, "I beat the hell out of him." Angela gets out of there as calmly as possible, trying not to draw any suspicion towards herself, and she succeeds in doing that. At the same time that Angelique is making her escape, Amanda, Trey's mother, is making a protective order against Gouker. Now let me repeat that. Amanda, the mother of the deceased boy, is filing for a protective order against her husband, Josh Gouker, after the murder of her son, right at the point that Gouker and his son disappeared. In the petition to the court, Amanda said that Gouker was directly threatening her and even said that Gouker was a suspect in the death of her son. There's only so many ways to say "I think you did it" without saying "I think you did it," but in this case, she almost literally said "I think you did it." On top of all of that, little Josh Young has been missing for about 2 days, and given the circumstances of his disappearance, a statewide Amber Alert is issued. These vacation plans are now falling apart extremely fast. Burkhead makes her way back to Louisville. The remaining group leave Tennessee and they make their way towards Alabama, Madison, Alabama. That Wednesday morning, the trio approached a 52-year-old woman in the parking lot of the Knights Inn across from the University of Alabama, Huntsville. My fiance's dad went to University of Alabama. Merhaba Mehmet. Roll Tide. Anyway, so the group approaches this woman and they ask for a ride to a bus station. And Gouker, being the upstanding citizen that he is, he pulls out a gun and then says that he wants a ride to Birmingham. It's about 100 miles away. They end up stopping in the city of Homewood, just outside of Birmingham, where they forced the woman to use a credit card in order to rent them a room at the Roadway Inn. She complied, as you'd expect, because Gouker has a fucking gun, and then the trio sent her on her way after that. The victim would go back to Madison and she would contact local police and tell them exactly what just happened. With the cooperation of Homewood police, they were eventually all apprehended. Oddly enough, not for kidnapping though, but for the charge of carrying a weapon without a permit. So the adults are sent to jail while Josh Young is sent to Jefferson County Family Court. Now that's Jefferson County, Alabama, mind you, which just so happens to be the exact same name of the county that they're from in Kentucky. You see what I mean about this naming thing? Now while Gouker is sitting in that Alabama jail, a phone call happens. Gouker initiates a phone call between him, cousin Cassi, and a detective from Kentucky, Detective Russ. Just to be clear, it was known by all parties that there was a detective on the line. This wasn't some kind of secret wiretapping or monitoring to facilitate this call. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Again, this is a call that Gouker initiated. This is a call going out from the jail with a detective on the phone going to Cassi. Cassi first told police back during the initial investigation back on May 13th that she had no idea what happened. She had no clue what could have happened to Trey that night. Now, can you tell me what's wrong with that statement? She lied, okay? She fucking lied. She 100% had an idea, but you know what? Let me just let her tell you herself. Here's a clip from that call.
Listen, they know everything. You hear me? About what? Everything. Your loyalty lies with me, right? Yes. Who killed Trey? Yeah, right. This is Big Josh. Who killed Trey? You did, right? I don't know. I need you to tell the truth, Cassi. They already know about everything, and you're not going to be in any trouble for helping. Okay, Cassi, it's Detective Russ from Louisville. Tell me about the night that Trey was murdered. Who woke you up in your bedroom? Well, little Josh. Okay. He got up and he tried to get me up and he said, I need your help. He said something about, I need to get rid of this stuff. Will you take me to get rid of it? Okay. Did you say what stuff or why? Yeah, I said, well, what is, and he said, well, I killed Trey. And then I took him to get rid of it.
You heard right. For providing incriminating information, Cassi was offered immunity. So Gouker, aka Big Josh, I feel like I probably should have just referred to him as Big Josh the entire time, but whatever. He coaxes Cassi into finally telling the truth. But let's listen to that one more time. Pay attention to how he leads her into the version of events that he wants her to say. And pay attention to how Cassi is unable to interpret all this because while Cassi is an incestuous cousin f***er, she's not a tenured criminal like Gouker is.
Listen, they know everything. You hear me? About what? Everything. Your loyalty lies with me, right? Yes. Who killed Trey? Yeah, right. This is Big Josh. Who killed Trey? You did, right? I don't know. I need you to tell the truth, Cassi. They already know about everything, and you're not going to be in any trouble for helping. Okay, Cassi, it's Detective Russ from Louisville. Tell me about the night that Trey was murdered. Who woke you up in your bedroom? Well, little Josh. Okay. He got up and he tried to get me up and he said, I need your help. He said something about, I need to get rid of this stuff. Will you take me to get rid of it? Okay. Did you say what stuff or why? Yeah, I said, well, what is, and he said, well, I killed Trey. And then I took him to get rid of it.
First she says it was Big Josh, Josh Gouker. Then she says it was Little Josh, Josh Young. Which one was it? Why would she switch like that? Well, when interviewed a few years later, which was a whole ordeal, which I'll cover in a moment, Cassi said that Big Josh told her that when it came down to it, she had a specific story that she had to tell. He wanted her to tell police that he was the one that killed Trey, for the primary purpose of covering Little Josh Young. But when she was ambushed on the phone, she didn't know which lie to go with. Cassi's story doesn't really waver after this point. Kind of, but we'll come back to Cassie momentarily. So Gouker is sitting in the Alabama jail, and after some time, Josh Young gets sent back to Kentucky. That's at this time that Louisville PD gets another one-on-one conversation with Josh Young. They haven't had a chance to speak to him since initially talking to him. But this one goes a little bit differently from their first conversation. You see, it's been over a month at this point, and the rumors are flying. I mean, think about it this way. How many less than savory things can somebody be involved in before you just associate them as a less than savory person? Sure, Gouker's the adult, Gouker's the parent, Gouker's the felon, but Josh Young didn't exactly help the situation at all. You see, Josh Young didn't really fight against any of this, and if he did nothing else, he accidentally let detectives know exactly how attached he is to his father. Not only how attached he was, but how sacred he held that relationship as well. Here, I'll let Josh tell you himself.
Coming up here, and no matter what we talk about today, okay? When you're done talking to me, then you'll be going back to wherever you need to go, okay? So I appreciate that. And I know it's a little warm in here, so I apologize for that. It's just kind of an older building. There was just a couple things I wanted to kind of talk to you about. And I guess it's a little bit of it was, remember when I talked to you the other day, I think it was like,
in your car?
Like 2 weeks ago, Thursday or something like that?
Yeah.
Or last week?
I remember.
I'm sorry, I can't remember
I don't know
stuff.
when it was, but...
And I'd ask you about what you told Detective Maroney at the school that day. And then you were kind of telling me something a little bit different about where you spent the night at and who you were with and all that. And so I just want you to kind of listen to the two stories you gave, and we'll kind of work through that and see what the real story is, okay? So let's just listen to this here real quick, that way you can remember what you said. Now, this is not my recorder, so I'm not sure. And just real quick, this isn't the whole interview, it's just the two segments that I'm concerned about where you told her you were that night and then where you told me you were that night. So it's not like the whole interview, so it's just going to be a minute or two long.
And were you at home last night, I guess, when your parents were having the barbecue? I remember there. Okay. And then what?
I was going to sleep and so was he.
Okay. About what time was that?
I'm not sure. After we got done eating, I was going to pour out from school. So
yeah.
We were both going to sleep.
Okay. And does he change into pajamas or does he sleep in his clothes?
Just depends.
Okay.
Take a shower at night.
Okay. So your mom, or Amanda, said that he took a shower last night. Do you remember if he took a shower or bath? Okay. And do you remember what he had on? Okay. Do you remember what his clothes were? Okay. Do you know if he had shoes on?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what kind of shoes?
I believe they're all black.
Mm-hmm.
All black. I don't know what kind of.
Okay. And do you all have separate rooms?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you ever see him go into his room?
Well, like I was sitting out in the shower. That's the last time I seen him, which was already after we ate the barbecue to get dressed up.
Okay. So, but you know he changed back into his regular clothes, so you saw him after he got out of the shower?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he say anything to you about? Okay.
Tell me about the night after everybody leaves. You said something about the shower. Kind of walk through that.
He said he was going in to take a shower.
Where were you at when he said that?
We were still on the back porch in the backyard because the cookout was just ending, and he said he was going to take a shower or something going in.
Now was Mackenzie there then? Was she?
Oh yeah, she took a shower too that night.
Now were you?
No, she. What?
Were you in the house when he took the shower?
Because I came over here.
So as he tells you on the back porch, I'm going to go take a shower. Then you
He said I'm going to go in here and take a shower and calm down for the night. And so I was going to come down here and just calm down for a little bit, watch some movies, and ended up falling asleep down here.
Now Amanda, she's not working at the house anymore, right?
No.
You know why she quit, what that was all about?
I guess she just said she didn't want to go back because it took too much for her
story today than when you told the detective over there at the gym, which was you told her that you were in the house when Trey was taking a shower.
No, I was. I came over here when he was taking
And that when he got out of the shower, you watched him put his clothes back on.
No, I heard that he walked out the door fully dressed in the coat, which would have to be after the shower because it was after I came over here and he said he was taking a shower.
But I mean, in the interview you told her, because it's on, she recorded it, you said that Trey took a shower, and you were there when he took a shower, and you watched him put his clothes back on. That was your own words.
That was false.
So you weren't there when he took a shower, or?
Correct, I was here.
And you weren't there when he put his clothes back on?
No, but I knew he would put his clothes back on because when he walked out the back porch.
You kind of got that from them.
I kind of put two and two together.
Okay.
So you understand my concern with the story there, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I would think that your first story that you told Detective Maroney at the school is probably the true version of the events. Because Cassie says she doesn't remember if you stayed there or not that night.
John does.
No, John doesn't either.
Because he was passed out on the couch.
I'm just telling you. So we need to work through what the truth really is, okay? Like I say, you're leaving here when you're done talking to me, or you can walk out right now. But so we kind of need to get the truth, and there's a lot of other things I want to talk to you about. So let's kind of work through this part at first. Tell me the truth about that night.
We were on the back porch. It was me, him, Dad and Amanda stayed on that porch the whole night, evidently, because we were on the back porch and he told me he was going to take a shower and calm down for the night. So I went to Cassie's. I planned on, I didn't know if I was going to sleep down there or sleep down at Amanda's, but I got comfortable down at Cassie's. Ended up watching a movie and falling asleep down there.
So why would you?
I guess the first day, it was a bad day.
Yeah, and I understand that. I can understand, but let me tell you this. I had a family member murdered before, and when I told the police back when I was like 11, I told them the truth the first time. I didn't have to tell them something that I know I was upset and I was scared and I was angry and I was all those things that everybody went through. But I still told the police when they asked me a question, I would tell them what happened. They didn't have to come back to me a week later or 2 weeks later or a month later because what I told them was the truth. So when you start telling a couple different stories, it makes me wonder about your credibility or your truthfulness. And at this point, I believe the story you told her at the school that day is the true story. Because even Amanda said you were there.
That night?
That night when he was taking a shower.
No, I wasn't. You can ask my dad.
I mean, but
you can ask.
But the stories aren't even, well, your stories aren't even close. To, I wasn't there. I was down at Cassie's watching TV, getting comfortable. To, I was there. I saw him take a shower. We were going to go to bed. I saw him put his clothes back on, including his shoes.
But I got that story because my dad and Amanda told me that night he walked out the back door fully dressed head to toe and then walked back in and shut the door.
And of course, I think that's easy to say now. But when she clarified with you a couple of different times, so you saw him put his clothes back on? Yes. What kind of shoes did he put on? Some kind of black shoes. So, it's not like my dad told me, or it's not like Amanda told me.
I mean, that's the only kind of shoes he had, so that had to be the shoes he put back on.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying? That your story doesn't make any sense. And I don't want you to get jammed up in this murder case at all.
Had nothing to do with it.
And so that's kind of where we need to work through right now before we go on to some other things. I think you were in the house that night.
I was not.
I think you saw him take a shower. I think you saw him put his clothes back on, and I think him and your dad went back down to where this happened at.
No, sir.
And let me just show you my phone here real quick. See on my phone? A lot of people have these nowadays. It's got a voice recorder on it. And we can record, and I can talk and say, Chop, hello, how are you doing, Josh Young? And I can stop it, and I can save it, and then I can play it. I can talk and say, Chop, hello, how are you doing, Josh Young? See how that works? And you would never know if that was on You'd never know if this was sitting right here, would you? That I was recording our conversation. You would have no idea. So you have talked to a few people that were smart enough to do something similar to this, either with their phone or with a little digital recorder or something like that. And I know you've talked to a few people.
Just you and
I don't mean police-wise, I mean friends. Some of your friends you've talked to. And you've told your friends a few things, a little more in detail about maybe what happened to Trey. Yeah?
like what?
And I've got a text message from some of your friends that they were sending to their other friends, telling them what you had told them.
Well, I've told you the truth.
What have you told Connor?
That he was killed. Really haven't told her anything.
Who's some of your other close friends?
After that incident, nobody was really able to come back around.
Okay, but just because they don't come around after the murder, I mean, there's still people you knew or were acquaintances with, or?
I was pretty cool with everybody on the street. Everybody was always down there. Cassie's, Amanda's.
What other female friends do you have, or do you associate with?
Not really any.
Who's Connor been arguing with on Facebook?
Sarah.
Have you talked to Sarah?
Not recently, no.
I mean, before the murder, a couple days after the murder?
Maybe.
Think about what I just showed you on my phone, or what we talked about. And I want you to tell me the truth about what you and Sarah may have talked about.
I can't remember if I've talked to Sarah or not after. I know I've talked to her before.
Right.
But.
And what were y'all's conversations about Trey?
None. She didn't know anything about Trey that I knew of.
She knew Trey.
She did? I didn't know that. She never came around.
What other girls do you have that were friends of yours?
Not really any. Sarah's not even a friend. I don't talk to her anymore because Connor and her don't get along. So I haven't talked to her at all.
So why would there be other friends out there that have came to me, and I've interviewed more people in this case than probably any murder case that I've interviewed anybody on, even the little Ivan Kano case. Why would some of your friends, male or female, come to me and say that you and your dad were talking about how you all would kill people before Trey was murdered, and that Trey was murdered in a similar fashion to how you described how you and your dad would do it?
I have no idea.
So why would they lie about that?
Grudges? I don't know. I get along with everybody.
So if I had a grudge with...
So nobody would really have a reason to lie.
Like to say that CPS worker Bridget. Say I had a grudge with her.
Who Bridget?
Yeah, it's just one, So if I had a grudge with her for any reason, some kind of work issue, you think I would go around saying...
I mean, that'd be a horrible thing. I know
Bridget told me that her and her mom were going to talk about how they were going to kill somebody.
I know what you're
saying. And then, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a horrible thing. Maybe for credit.
It'd be something different on a grudge. You could be like,
Maybe to be noticed. I don't know.
Were you talking about stuff like that, maybe to be noticed?
No. I never once talked about killing anybody. And I never heard my dad talking about killing anybody. And my dad liked Trey, and so did I.
Okay, let's talk about the ride down. Why did y'all go to Alabama? What was the reason to take Alabama?
We were just passing through Alabama.
What made you all even leave? The girl that was with you, who's she?
Sister friend.
Had you met her before?
Huh?
Had you met her before?
Yeah, no.
I mean, because obviously your dad is on parole, so he's not allowed to even leave this county. And I know a few weeks ago y'all went to Michigan. And then y'all went to Alabama. So what was the conversation in the car and going down to Alabama? Y'all driving in the car, with some of the conversation y'all had?
Can't even remember.
And I'm specifically talking about just the incident with Trey.
I don't even know if we talked to Trey about Trey on the way to Alabama.
And you all talked about it because she did the same thing. She knew that your dad might be a little... She's not sure if she could trust him all the way, so she recorded some of y'all's conversations.
I don't believe that because we didn't talk about Trey on the way to Alabama.
So why would I hear on the recording that you all were talking about, you specifically talking about, you were kicking Trey in the head?
I don't know. That didn't happen. I never have said that in my life.
Okay, so your friends that say you are talking about killing people a couple weeks before the murder, and Trey dies similarly. And this girl driving to Alabama, she's lying. So everybody's just lying.
That's not true at all.
So they're all just liars.
I don't know what they are. They aren't telling the truth, so it must make them liars.
Have you had a chance to think about? Obviously, I mean, your life was pretty good while your dad was in prison. You got to admit, you had a much better situation.
I mean, I love my dad more than anybody in this world, and I'd rather be with him than anybody in this world. So my life was much better with my dad.
So your life was better getting arrested in Alabama?
Being with my dad, it's all worth it.
Really? So you would rather not be in a secure home, having a secure school,
if I'm with my dad,
having a decent family, having Trey as your friend, now he gets out of jail, or he gets out of prison, and Amanda quits her job, he goes to jail, Trey gets murdered. I mean, all that stuff's better? That's better to you?
Of course not. I said being with my dad is better than being anywhere else.
But you've been with your dad for, he's been out for 7 months, something like that?
It's about that.
And you've already been arrested in Alabama for a gun charge? That's better? I'm confused by that statement.
I had nothing to do with it.
Because, well, obviously you did, because they at least you didn't let the charges get dismissed.
So that was just accidental arrest. They had no reason to arrest me.
Well, there was a gun in the room, and nobody had a permit to have it, so that's their city ordinance, so it's not an accidental arrest.
I mean, they could have. I don't mess with no guns. I'm 15, do I look like having a gun?
Well, I mean, you don't think I've arrested 15-year-olds for carrying guns before?
I'm sure you have.
Okay, so then...
I mean, but
I mean, that just doesn't make sense, but...
Oh, it does to me.
So, I mean, there's just a lot of inconsistencies in your story, and that's what I'm concerned about. Either it's how you saw him, or when you didn't see him, or you talked about killing people, and then you didn't talk about killing people, you talked about kicking him in the head, and then you didn't talk about kicking him. I mean, it just seems like everybody's... Yeah, I just said that 5 minutes ago. It seems like everybody's telling me stuff, and to you, everything's like, no, nothing happened, they're liars, I don't know what you're talking about.
I've never said anything like that. Neither is my dad or anybody.
Do you know much about... I'm sure you probably watch like the CSIs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I like Law and Order, but CSI's alright.
A little more cheesy, isn't it?
It's alright.
And then, how well do you know the girl in Michigan? Nikki.
No, I mean, we started talking on Facebook while my dad was in prison, but...
How old is she?
How old is she?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, is she like 20 or is she like 40 or 10?
I guess around my dad's age. I'm not sure.
What was the situation there with him and her?
They were arguing over her talking to somebody or something. I don't know. But
were you there, I guess, when he supposedly put a knife to her throat and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you at when that happened, supposedly?
I didn't know that happened at all. So I can't answer that question.
Well, I mean, did he ever go up there recently without you? I know you all went once.
No.
And then how did you all get up to Michigan?
This last time?
Yeah.
My sister's mom.
Which sister?
Sister in Michigan.
Okay. She drove all the way down here to get you?
Well, she stayed down there a little bit too, for a day.
Oh, okay. How'd y'all get to Alabama?
I don't feel comfortable answering that question.
How'd you get to Alabama?
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Did you hitchhike, or did you take a plane, or that's all I'm asking. Did you take a train?
No. We drove.
Did that girl have a car?
Uh-uh.
Oh. So what's the deal with that lady down there?
I don't want to talk. I ain't in that. I don't feel comfortable talking about that. I had nothing to do with anything about that, so I don't feel the need to talk about it.
Okay, going back to the forensic stuff. Some people said that your dad, and I have phone records to verify it, said that your dad talked to somebody, and I'm not going to tell you who, at about 9:37 on that Tuesday night y'all had the cookout. And he said that he was with you, and your dad said that he was with Trey, and y'all were all smoking weed. I'm not worried about it if you are, because I ain't the police, so I don't care about that. You have to tell you what the story is so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And this was at 9:37. And The toxicology results for Trey after the autopsy was he had marijuana in his urine, but not in his blood, which means it was in the system just quickly enough to get in his urine before he was killed.
No, he smokes weed just as much as anybody else. If he has weed in his system, it's in his blood.
It's not in his blood.
It's an everyday thing.
It's in his urine only. It did not show up in his blood.
Well, he was at his dad's previously before that on the ground.
So if your dad is saying he's with you and Trey smoking weed at 9:37,
he said that.
Okay, well he did at 9:37, and I plus have phone records to verify the person's story that told me this. And so at 9:37, he's saying he's with you and Trey smoking weed, and then Trey didn't have enough weed in his system to get into his blood, which means he was murdered pretty fast after that phone call.
Mm-hmm. I was at Cassie's.
You weren't at Cassie's.
I was.
No.
With John. John was on the couch. He was waking up, nodding back off.
You may have been there at some point, but you weren't there. You were there maybe after Josh took a shower, or Trey took a shower, and Trey got dressed, and Trey tried to leave, and Trey put his shoes back on. Because I know you saw all that. Okay, so if your story is you didn't see him take a shower, you all weren't getting ready to go to bed, you didn't see him put his shoes back on or his clothes back on, then how can I believe anything else you tell me during this whole entire interview? Because you clearly said it. I can play it again if you want to hear it. I can play it again.
I heard everything on the CD.
I can play it again.
You don't have to trust me. I mean, you don't know me.
I mean, if you're lying about that, then how do I know you're telling me the truth about anything else?
That's just a chance you have to take. There ain't real anyway.
Have you talked to Amanda or seen Amanda?
Mm-mm.
And then I guess Connor came and visited you yesterday or day before or something?
Yesterday, day before.
How did that go? What was that conversation about?
Nothing about Trey or anything that's going on legal-wise. Me, her, and her mom played a board game. Just hung out for a little bit. We didn't get the full visit because her grandma brought her down and her grandma wasn't on the list. She couldn't stay alone, so she had to, I guess, go back home and get her mom to bring her. So it was a short visit, period.
I mean, but you see how all the information I'm getting from a lot of different people, from phone records, from autopsy reports.
I can tell you I've never once talked about killing anybody, kicking Trey in the head. Me, Trey, and my dad were not smoking weed at 9:37. That's all false.
I mean, you see why I would have to come back and talk to you about that.
I would
everybody's
talk to
coming
somebody about that. If I had your job, I'd be doing the same thing. And I understand why you're doing it, but I had nothing to do with it. And I'm pretty sure my dad doesn't either. My dad was with Amanda. She stated that the whole night. Why would she try to change it? Is she trying to change that now?
Well, I'm not going to tell you who's changing what or who's talking about what. That's part of the investigation. So have you had time to think about what might have happened down there that night?
I mean, it's just blank in my head. Everybody's thought about it. I don't know what could have possibly happened.
My feeling is you know more than what you're telling me.
That's not true.
And my feeling is, did you know your dad tried to call me twice yesterday?
Mm-mm.
And then he called me when y'all got locked up to let me know y'all got locked up?
I didn't know anything, but I haven't talked to my dad since we got locked up, so no.
I mean, you want to find the person responsible for this, right?
Well, of course. What kind of question is that? Yeah, I do.
That's the question I'm asking. That's the kind
as
of
much
question.
of anybody else, yes.
So your honesty is important in this investigation.
I understand that, and I've told you I have nothing to do with it. Neither does my dad. That's why are you harassing us and the close family instead of really trying to figure out?
Oh.
I've heard
so
people
you
say
know.
that.
So you know what I've done in my investigation.
I mean, you've been harassing my dad. So is everybody else.
How about harass your dad? Your dad calls me like 20 times a day.
I mean,
so wait. You're going to sit there with your hat cocked sideways, with your red that your dad likes to wear and all that stuff, and your red shorts hanging down, your underwear sticking out. But then you're going to tell me things that you have no idea about.
Well, I just don't.
I have not harassed your dad.
I feel
your
like
dad called me 10 times a day. Your dad's called me twice since he's been locked up in Alabama. He's called me twice, so I'm harassing your dad. So you're just gonna, you can sit there and say stuff that you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I feel.
Who else have I interviewed in this case?
I have no idea.
So then you don't know who else I've
Me and
interviewed in
my
this
dad.
case. You don't know who I've interviewed in this case.
I'm talking about me and my father.
Right, but you said I need to be doing stuff to find out who really did it. But you don't know what I
Instead
did.
of interviewing
So
me,
to sit there and just run your
Dad,
mouth is pretty
Amanda.
inappropriate.
Well, I'm sorry for
You should be sorry.
but I didn't mean it that way. I just meant.
Well, how do you mean it when I say you
I
say
think
I'm
it's an
harassing you?
inconvenience that you're interviewing me right now, and I don't know anything.
Okay, but you just said 10 minutes ago that if you had my job, you would ask you the same questions.
Yeah, but not keep on going and going and saying that you think I know more than I'm saying, which I don't. I think that's harassment. That's calling me a liar. And
Well, I think I can play it again if you want to hear your statement.
I told you.
Which, to me, you're a liar.
Well, I'm sorry if you think that, sir.
I mean, your own word. It's your own words. You can't take back your own words. Your own words where you saw him you knew he was taking a shower. You all were going to go to bed. You never once told Detective Maroney that you were going to go down and stay at Cassie's house. You told her you all were preparing to go to bed and that he took a shower. You watched him put his clothes back on. You watched him put his shoes back on. Those are your own words, not my words, not her words. You can't take back your words. Those are on tape.
Yeah, but I've told you the story.
And that's, I believe what it is, just a story.
It's the truth.
Okay, so then it must be the truth that you saw him put his clothes back on and take a shower.
No, I knew he put his clothes back on and his shoes back on, and they must have been the black shoes because the only shoes he wore.
But that's not what you told her.
Well,
It wasn't because you heard
I was in shock that day. I was. Along with everybody else.
Do you have any questions of me?
Do you know anything about my dad? What's going on with him right now?
Mm-hmm.
Me neither. That's pretty much it.
So let me ask you this, if it came down to your dad saying he had an involvement or your dad saying you had an involvement, which choice you think he'd pick?
It's neither.
You think he would go to prison for it?
He's innocent, and so am I. There's no reason either one of us should be going to prison.
Well, I mean, I hope you're telling me the truth because, I mean, obviously some of the things I know you're not telling me the truth on. For things I've heard with my own ears on the recordings and things I've heard you say with your own words.
Okay.
I know it's not the truth. And that's why I'm giving you this last opportunity to tell me the truth.
I've told you the truth. And I'd like to go now. I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with this whole thing.
Can you sit here long enough for me to get your worker to come back up here?
Yeah.
I'll have him walk up and that way he can walk up with you.
So woman.
No, the guy that you were here with.
Ah, I thought you meant my social worker, Allison.
She may be here. I'll have to go check.
Young's behavior and dismissal of the police as a 15-year-old is frankly shocking. He's handling himself in a manner that only someone who's been through the system a few times could. Someone like Gouker. Gouker eventually makes his way back to Kentucky, and that is a whole story in and of itself. He was supposed to be transferred out of Alabama, but instead they just released him, so the U.S. Marshals had to dispatch and apprehend him. What a nightmare. So he's back in custody, he's back in Kentucky, these kidnapping charges end up falling through, so all of that is behind him now, and he's behind bars himself. And that's when Gouker has a recorded conversation with police about this Gouker murder, and that's where Gouker starts to cough up some information.
They asked Trey what time it was. Trey pulled his phone out of his pocket, and then when he put the phone back in there, he hit Trey in the head with it. And then when he fell, he said he hit him like 15 times.
Gouker implicates Young as the man behind the murder. Extremely odd turn of events. Gouker and Young seem to be thick as thieves. Why the change? Why the turn? This statement, combined with a call that Gouker had with Cassi earlier, ultimately led to Josh Young's arrest and charge for the murder of Trey Zwicker. But then Gouker's story changed again. Gouker is now taking responsibility for the whole thing and saying that he killed Trey.
And what are you serving?
Life.
For what?
Killing Trey.
You
Did you enter into a guilty plea or did a jury find you guilty?
I just pled guilty.
Can you tell the jury what you told the judge when you pled guilty? What the facts were?
That I killed him for stealing from me and for keeping on stealing shit, you know. But that wasn't really I mean, I don't know. It just felt right at the time, but that wasn't why I did it. I mean, it's not like I wanted Trey to die, or if I could do it over, I'd kill him again. None of that, you know. I mean, his mother killed a couple of mine, and it just felt right. I mean, I know it sounds monstrous and all that shit, but it's not. If we was in the Old Testament, it'd be the same thing. I don't know if he came downstairs or came in from the back porch or where he came from. I don't know. I know what you're doing. You're trying to make microscopic little holes in the shit that I didn't even give a fuck about 2 years ago. So how can I tell you the exact thing now when I really didn't give a fuck then?
If you're telling the truth, it shouldn't be too hard for you.
Yeah, but goddamn, I've lied this whole fucking time, except for sense arraignment. Sense arraignment court, I've told you I've done it. I admitted everything I've done. I've been sentenced for it. Life in prison.
The evidence against Young was circumstantial at best, but in reality it was all hearsay and otherwise non-existent. Aside from cousin Cassie saying that Young showed up to her house, there was no one else and nothing else that really linked him to the crime. So after a 10-day trial,
we, the jury, find the defendant Joshua Young not guilty under instruction number 1.
One of only a few times Josh Young has shown any emotion throughout this trial. Young's attorney says they're thrilled.
He was thrilled and looking forward to his new life.
Josh Young was found not guilty, and Gouker pled guilty and he received life in prison, and that's where the story ends and everybody's happy. Nope. Well, as we all expected, Josh Young turned out to be a huge piece of shit, just like his dad. After the trial, he immediately starts getting into trouble again, and this is so shameless. He even appears on the Dr. Phil show. Dr. Phil does a 2-part expose on the case of Trey Zwicker, season 12, episode 109 and episode 110. My dad tried to frame me for murder. Yeah. For the entirety of both episodes, Young is just saying that he's not guilty of anything, sprinkled in with cousin Cassie saying that, yeah, she saw him the night of the murder and this and that. But the worst part of all is that the Zwicker parents are sitting on stage next to Young the entire time. Nothing really results from this, but there's some takeaways that I think are important. The first one is that Young does agree to do a polygraph, but ultimately at the end backs out of it. The second one is that cousin Cassie agrees to a polygraph, but at the end of it, she's found to be wholly deceptive. The implications of that are unlimited, but ultimately it's just something we can make note of. It's not something that's admissible or anything like that in court. And the third one is on that second episode at 35 minutes in and 35 seconds, Dr. Young tells Cassie that Josh Young has no reason to egress against you, basically saying that Josh Young has no reason to retaliate against her. Well, that's pretty interesting because just a few months after this was filmed and released, Josh Young was arrested for assaulting Cassie's boyfriend, John Robertson, for the incriminating statements that he made during the trial. You got that one wrong, Dr. Phil. Young continued his streak of trying to fill his father's shoes in, ultimately catching a gun charge and becoming a felon. Who would have thought, right? Big Josh Gouker, is keeping busy as well. While he was convicted in July of 2013 for Trey's murder, only 7 months later, he's now asking to have his confession thrown out. Once again, Josh Gouker.
In July, Gouker was given a life sentence. 7 months later, Gouker filed a motion stating he lied to save his son, Josh Young.
My attorney, Mark Hall, knew what I was doing. Knew that I was going to come in here and lie and take the blame for my son, and not only allowed me to do it, but coached me along the way. Even in here, which we're about to watch, I guess, he told me before we walked in here to keep my answers short. I committed murder several times.
It's kind of interesting that I asked you the question during the plea hearing that, was it your plan to, at a later date, try and set aside your guilty plea? Remember that?
Yes, sir. And that wasn't a lie. I mean, I've admitted I've lied throughout the whole thing. But I thought, even though at that moment Josh was still charged with this, that as soon as that went everywhere, that I said I did it, you accepted my guilty plea, I thought they would dismiss it. And then I would...
That was all part of your master plan.
Well, I mean, I had to do what whatever I could, man, to save my son. He's 15 years old, facing life in prison.
And it's here that the story goes kind of stagnant. Josh Young is out there being a criminal. Josh Gouker is trying to get his confession thrown out. But then that gun charge happened. The gun charge that turned Josh Young into a felon. While serving his sentence in a federal prison for that, Josh Young does an interview and writes a letter, flipping the story on its back once more.
Did you murder your stepbrother, Trey Zwicker?
Yeah, I killed him, but to keep it real, I don't consider him my stepbrother. I mean, my dad was just having sex with his mom, but my dad was also having sex with a lot of women.
Josh, walk me through that day. What happened?
I guess he wanted to smoke some weed or something. I had some weed, and then I took him out behind Liberty. And, like, I didn't really plan it, but I can't really remember the exact words he said when we was down there smoking, but he got smart. And I was young. You know, my brain wasn't fully developed, not processed author because maybe a little weed. So I'm not in my right state of mind. And I just had enough. Same little smart. So before I knew it, I done hit him with the baseball bat. Then once I hit him, I just couldn't stop hitting him. And so that's something that I haven't publicly told anybody until now.
Do you know how many times you beat him?
I lost count. I know when I hit him the first time, he fell flat out. It started shaking and making all kinds of weird little noises. It was freaking me out. You know what I'm saying? So probably like 20. Overkill for real, way too many times.
What was going through your mind in that moment when you were beating him and then afterwards?
I'm like, damn, I mean, you can't cry over spilled milk like they say, so I mean, ain't no taking it back.
Why did you do it?
For one, I just didn't like him. He had a big mouth with no actions to back it up. But for two, you know, he told on me one night when we got pulled over by the police, coming home from a house party. And I had some weed on me, and he told on me about that, something petty.
Did your dad tell you or prompt you or instruct you to kill Trey?
Absolutely not. If anything, he would have instructed me to never do that.
So Josh Young writes a multi-page letter admitting to his guilt and does an interview with a local media station, completely taking the blame and responsibility for Trey Zwicker's murder. It is never ending with these two. So how did we get to this point? How did everything get so messed up? Well, you see, Gouker says that when he was on that vacation, Josh Young ended up admitting to him that he killed Trey Zwicker. He makes his son not tell him any details just in case he needs to pass a polygraph, but he also coached Young on what he needs to say when the police eventually catch up with him. Here's a quote from Josh Gouker. I told Josh, I said, listen, if they catch us, just start saying things like, I deserve a mommy too. Why can't I have a mommy? Trey's got a mommy and I don't. Make it look like you just snapped. They were caught as they expected, and while Josh Gouker stuck to the pre-rehearsed story, Josh Young did not. Josh Young refused to tell police anything, but at the same time, Josh Gouker is telling police that his son killed Zwicker with a bat. Once again, Josh Gouker. I didn't know what to do after that. He didn't follow the plan. I didn't know what to do, so I just told him I did it. It's almost guaranteed that Gouker thought that Young would get a comparatively lighter sentence, given the age and the pre-rehearsed motive, and that he and his son would be free and reunited after Young needed to serve only just a few years for the death of Trey Zwicker. The courts, however, have yet to make any move one way or another. The reason why is up to anyone's guess. So what exactly happened the night of Trey's murder? Well, the harsh reality is that we're probably never going to know, but the harsher reality is that Trey's loved ones are never going to know either. Josh Young was found not guilty for the murder, and because he was found not guilty, he can't be tried again for the same crime. It's double jeopardy. Remember, they didn't drop the charges after Gouker came out saying that he did it, they just added on charges to Gouker. Josh Young actually faced trial for the crime and was found not guilty. Now Gouker, while he may or may not have been the one to actually swing into the back of Trey's head, he 100% was at least partially responsible for what happened before and after the murder. I'll leave you with this final clip that Gouker gave while in prison when he was asked if he thinks that he's a good father.
Were you a good father?
Probably not by society standards. I mean, to him, I'm probably father of the year, you know, but to the normal people, probably not.
Some would argue and say that taking the fall for your son was probably the only decent thing you've done with your life.
It's the biggest, and I can't disagree with that. Can't disagree with that. It's the biggest. It's the it probably is the big. It is by far. the most decent, realest thing I've ever done.
Time and due process will tell us what happens next. Joshua Gouker is serving a life sentence at the Kentucky State Prison, and unless he's granted parole, which he's eligible for in October of 2031, he'll remain there for the rest of his sentence. Josh Young is currently serving 5 years at the Rotorua Assessment Center for receiving stolen property. He becomes eligible for parole in February of 2026 and has a maximum release date of February 20th, 2028. Assuming he doesn't pick up any new charges, he'll remain there for the rest of his sentence. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Morbid Curiosity. I'm sorry it took so long to make. I had a different case that I was working on and I ended up switching to this one, and this one ended up becoming a whole thing. But thank you for being patient. Thank you all for supporting. And yeah, thank you all so much for every like, comment, subscription. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel, the secondary channel as well. I got a lot of stuff coming, but I'm excited to see y'all there. And that's it. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.